My best friend Marcus and I were and still are inseparable, pretty much since the first day we met. We met under some pretty weird circumstances, but I'm glad we did. We met at a local park near both of our houses. I was playing basketball by myself, just practicing my shot, when Marcus came along and asked if he could shoot with me. I of course shared the hoop with him, and we very quickly became lifelong friends from this day forward, and it became a daily ritual for us to meet at the court every day after school. Sometime in the middle of the week, just like any other day, we met up to play basketball. We did our thing for maybe an hour, and I had to go home early this day. I had something important to do with my family. We were both bummed that we had to call it early, so that's when Marcus asked, "Why don't we try playing tonight?" "You're funny, bro. I'll catch you tomorrow," I said, laughing back. "Hey dude, I'm serious. We could totally come back here tonight and no one would ever know. Like, we could sneak out." As cool as that sounded, I thought it was risky. Cops like to patrol this area at night past dusk when the park closes, and plus it wouldn't be very fun playing in the pitch black darkness. He assured me it would be tons of fun and that we wouldn't get caught. I told him I would think about it, but in my head, I already pretty much came to the decision that I wasn't going to be down for it. Later on in the night, Marcus was blowing my phone up. I shrugged off most of his messages and I kept it bleak with him. He was just trying to convince me to go, and I barely wanted to. I don't remember what he said that made me change my mind, but after a good half hour of him being persistent, I eventually caved in and decided to meet with him at the court. It wasn't too far of a walk for Marcus, so he was already there when I showed up. He lived less than a block away, but it took me 10 minutes or so to get there. "About time you showed up. I thought you were going to bail on me," he said jokingly. I didn't think it was very funny, as I was already on edge and feeling tense. I wasn't the type to break the rules or sneak out in general. The good thing was that the basketball court was way in the back of the park, which meant if anyone were to drive toward us, we would know long before they would be anywhere near close enough to see us. So anytime we saw a car, we ran behind some trees to hide, just behind the court in case it was the police. This probably happened maybe a total of 3 or 4 times. Honestly, after a while, I started to forget we were even there past curfew, as I was just so focused on playing Marcus in a 1v1. My eyes were adjusted just enough in the night to play. We mostly played in the paint, really close to the hoop, as the farther away from the hoop you were, the harder it would be to see the net. It was a close game, when I swear that I heard something that sounded like it came from behind us. Behind the court was a strip of trees and dense woods and a creek. Marcus said it was probably just an animal, and we even joked about how it was probably a bunny or something, and that he wanted to hang out with us. We laughed it off, and we continued the game. I would say no longer than 5 minutes later, we both heard it this time. The same noise. It sounded like something was moving through the woods, stepping on sticks and leaves, crackling with every step they took. After some intense looking towards the woods, we stepped towards them. We were trying to see if we could make out what it was. "Hey bro, maybe it's just Oh crap, I was going to say deer, but what in the shit?" "Run bro," I said. There was a creepy looking older man staring at us, just a little taller than us, and a little overweight. I can still see his disgusting face when I tell this story. We of course ran until we were sure we lost him. He started chasing after us when we took off, but gave up shortly after, it seemed. It was really weird. I'm not sure if he just couldn't run because he was older, or if he simply wasn't trying as hard. He had a Michael Myers-like edge walk at the end when I looked behind us each time, hardly running, just eyeing his target down and definitely trying to scare us. I don't know if he posed any real threat, but I'm pretty sure he wanted to kill us. I couldn't see him well enough to make out facial features, but to us teenagers, it was creepy, and we didn't know what he was capable of. I don't know what else a creepy man in the woods would want with a couple of 14-year-old boys. My sneaking out story all starts with me being at my friend's house. My best friend's mom was really cool and would let us boys stay the weekend almost every week during our freshman year in high school. Eventually, we abused her niceness and took things a little too far. We got into trouble, and ultimately, I was never allowed over there again after this night. Most of us boys were 14 years old. It was me, Jonathan, William, and Miles this weekend. Jonathan was the friend we were staying with. After we were sure Jonathan's mom was sleeping, we waited for maybe a half hour to sneak out. We met up with a couple of older kids from school, 2 sophomores and a junior, and even a 21-year-old that could get us alcohol. Thinking back, I don't know what a 21-year-old was doing hanging out with kids as young as us, but we didn't care. He was nice to us and he didn't act creepy, so it was whatever, and he got us stuff that we wanted. He was probably lonely. We wanted to meet up with some girls that were friends from school, but of course, some of us had to walk. Because the 21-year-old, whose name was Austin, I think, was the only one with a car at the time. I think some of the older kids had cars but couldn't manage to sneak out with them or something. I don't know the whole story to that. My main friends I was with that night all decided we wouldn't leave each other behind and we would just walk and meet everyone there. The girls were having a huge party and the host's parents were out of town. There was a girl I had a huge crush on there and I was excited to see her. I wasn't very experienced with alcohol or weed, but I knew she was, and I wanted to impress her. So after a while, I found myself way more fucked up than I planned on getting after one too many fireball shots. I don't remember what I did that gave her the ick, but I was acting like a fool apparently. And I made the girl I was into at the time turn a blind eye to me completely. I was so messed up that I passed out on a couch in the second living room. Luckily, Jonathan woke me up after one of the neighbors called the police for a noise disturbance. I woke up to 3 officers in the living room, but I managed to sneak out the back door of Jonathan, and we ran all the way home. Miles was shot to death in an altercation by one of the officers. He was one of my best friends. The officer claimed that my friend threatened him with a knife, which I know cannot be true. He just wouldn't do something like that. The cop was fired from his job after the small city we were from blew up in flames. Miles was a young black boy, and this was directly in the middle of the BLM thing. There was a huge race thing, and whether or not the cop shot him out of pure hatred and racism, or if the officer was trying to defend himself, we'll never truly know. Unfortunately, I wasn't there, so I will never know the true story. It's just hard for me to believe that Miles wouldn't cooperate with an officer pointing a gun at him, and I miss him so much. I've barely heard the officer's side of the story. All I know is he claims self-defense. It doesn't look good that he got fired, that's all I can say. One night when I was a teenager, my friend Max and I wanted to sneak out and meet up so we could smoke weed together. I brought the weed and the Bluetooth speaker, and he brought a lighter. Might sound kind of creepy, but we met up at a local cemetery. We lived on a dirt road in a small town, and the cemetery sat smack dab in the middle of our houses. So it made sense to meet there. It was dark as hell outside, and we were both timid about walking alone, so we talked on the phone until we saw each other. Probably about an 8-minute walk for the both of us. Say what you want, but it was creepy out there at night. With my hand in front of my face, I could only see maybe with 50% visibility, if that makes sense. There were no streetlights at all. Every once in a while, one of the houses that were far apart might have had some light coming from it, but not enough to add any difference. Most of the homes were a solid 200 or so feet from the road, so with it barely adding any significance to helping us see, it was nice to talk on the phone. It gave us both the sense of not feeling alone. The moonlight was the only source of light we had. Finally, when we met, we found a nice spot to chill and we began sparking up, keeping the music on a lower volume. After a while, we decided to walk around and explore a little. We walked towards the back of the cemetery and we found a building. As we got closer and saw the sign in front of it, we found that it was a morgue. Of course, our high on intrigued stoner brains just had to check it out. "Wonder if we can see any dead people," Max asked. "Bro, don't be ridiculous," I replied, hitting him on the shoulder. "Ow, that hurt, asshole." "Well, don't be an idiot then. Jeez, that's disrespectful," I said. At this point, we were out of our minds and maybe I was a little paranoid. The weed was getting to me a little bit, but I felt especially weird when I saw there were cameras rigged all over the place, watching our every move. Max kept making dumb jokes about how he wanted to see dead people and it was weirding me out, and it killed the vibe for me, so I was honestly ready to go home. I made up an excuse saying that I had to go home because my mom found out I snuck out, and that she was texting me and blowing my phone up and about what I was doing. Of course that wasn't true though. "Hey, I'm gonna call you real quick so we can talk on our way home," Max said. We headed our separate ways and I got the call from Max. After talking for a minute, the call abruptly ended. Shit, I thought, lost service. But when I looked at my phone, it was worse. My phone died. Back then, we had iPhone 5Ss, and mine was already starting to get old. Sometimes my phone would die randomly when it was at 20% or lower, and it was quite annoying. We were going to especially want to talk on the phone on our way home. It was already creepy enough walking alone at night, but being high makes it 10 times worse. Everything only added to the creepiness. The dark road, the bats, the howling coyotes, and the fact that I still had 10 minutes of walking until I got home. I grew paranoid as time wore on. Soon, I saw the headlights of a truck on the other end of the road approaching me. Of course, my mind already started jumping to the worst case scenario, like it's a cop, and I'm going to be arrested. Or even worse, someone is going to try to kidnap me. My heart was beating faster and faster as the vehicle got closer. The car started to slow down when it saw me, and it came to a complete stop right next to me. But I continued walking, trying my best to pay no attention. But eventually I had no choice. "Hey kid, what are you doing out here so late by yourself? Don't you know it's dangerous? Where's your mama?" I continued ignoring him and I picked up my pace. But he got out of the car and he started jogging to me. "Hey buddy, I just want to give you a ride home," he said. "I'm good. Now just leave me alone, please," I yelled. At this point, I was full on sprinting, and so was he. We were both in a full-on foot race. I had some distance on him, and luckily I came across a stick to defend myself. I don't know how he was so fast for an old man, but he was catching up, so I did what I had to do. I turned around and whacked him in the face with it as hard as I could. He stumbled and fell back, so I picked up a couple of rocks and chucked them at him as he fell to the ground, hoping to come as close as I could to immobilizing him. One of the bigger rocks hit him right in the shin and he yelled out in pain, buying me enough time to get away from him safely. I was now pretty close to home, but not enough, so I hid in the woods for a second at my neighbor's until I was sure he was gone. I didn't want him seeing where I lived. There was a narrow trail that I knew that led to my house. It was probably impossible to see with all the black I was wearing, but I wanted to be safe. Probably not the smartest move, but I was full of adrenaline and thinking on my feet. Maybe he was just innocent, and he was really trying to help me with a ride home, but I doubt it. I would consider that more if he hadn't chased me half a mile down the road. I'm pretty sure it's not normal to chase teenage kids at night. It's barely even acceptable to talk to minors in the first place out in public if you don't know them. That's what makes it extra creepy to me. Every time I look back on this, I always feel like I escaped death, narrowly.